I'm in my mid-30s. Recently, I found myself in an awkward situation with my wife's aunt that I can't easily explain away. It was an unavoidable circumstance, but I won't make excuses for it. I'm a young father, raising a newborn baby. My wife's aunt lives in the countryside, tending to a small vegetable garden. My mother-in-law is the eldest of 9 siblings, and her sister, the aunt in question, is the youngest. I've heard she and my wife grew up together, almost like sisters. Not much age difference between them. The aunt has always been generous, giving us greens in the spring, cucumbers, melons, and watermelons in the summer, and green onions in the fall. However, I received word that a heavy rainstorm had caused significant damage to her area. Knowing how close she and my wife are, ignoring this situation would be a big disappointment to my wife, especially now when any help would be greatly appreciated. We were preparing to rush over to her place. My wife had given birth about a month ago and had just come home from the maternity clinic. She wished to help out at her aunt's place, but couldn't because of our newborn daughter. So, I put on some comfortable clothes and headed to the aunt's house. It's about an hour and a half drive from our home to her newly built apartment. Her husband has a stable business and started small-scale farming. After getting a plot of land for their garden at the apartment, they found joy in farming, harvesting plenty of vegetables to share, not only with my mother-in-law, but also with us. The aunt enjoyed farming so much that she spent years looking for the right land, eventually buying a plot about 15 minutes drive from their home at the foot of a low hill. They ambitiously built a second house there, where they could relax and even spend the night after a tiring day. They equipped the second house with small appliances, hosted guests for barbecue parties, and allowed them to stay over. The aunt was living her dream of a rural life, diligently taking care of her second home despite the attacks from various insects. She loved the nature around her. However, the recent heavy rain damaged her dream house, leaving her devastated. When I visited the aunt's second house, which we had seen in its prime just 5 weeks ago, when my wife was heavily pregnant, it was in a sorry state. "Hello, Aunt. I'm here," I called out loudly. She came out wearing gloves, her usual bright demeanor dimmed by the disaster. "You've come all this way. It must have been hard with the roads being so muddy." "Thank you, and I'm sorry for the trouble," she said. The aunt, always known among her siblings for her beauty, looked worn and tired. "Where's Uncle?" I asked. "He went to the hardware store to buy some tools we need to fix up the place. He's been grumbling about how the house is a mess and how it's all because of him, insisting we build it," she replied with a slight chuckle. "Officially, they say he bought the land because he loved farming, but I know the truth. My uncle-in-law went to great lengths to build this house, primarily because of the aunt's beauty, which has caused him much distress over the years, wanting her to have a distraction in farming. They married young, and their child is now an adult. My aunt, who absolutely adores her only son, a college student, is living on his own in New York. My uncle, captivated by my young and beautiful aunt, ended up buying a farm on a whim, because she mentioned she had too much free time and wanted to take up farming. My aunt has always been known for her beauty and slim figure, often receiving compliments wherever she goes. Back when her son was younger, she used to make excuses to go out, drinking with her friends, and come home late. My uncle met my aunt through a friend, and they started dating. Soon after, they got pregnant and hurried into marriage. As a college student, my aunt was more into the party scene than her studies, often drinking daily even while dating my uncle. Then, just a few months in, they had a child, and my aunt, unable to finish her studies, would not answer calls when out and would return home at dawn, leaving my uncle constantly on. For example, it's understandable for him to be worried, given how attractive my aunt is, especially when other men at bars want to join tables with her. My aunt feels left out seeing her friends graduate, secure jobs, and wants to blow off some parenting stress. Sometimes, when my aunt comes home late, she'd call her mother-in-law, asking if she could stay over because she needed a break to hang out with her friends. Even during her nephew's exam periods, she would make plans to go out, despite most mothers helping their kids focus and study. Surprisingly, her nephew still managed to get into a good university, which makes my aunt quite the lucky woman. My uncle, fearing his beautiful wife might find someone else, started to pay more attention, but found nothing amiss. Seeing my aunt's newfound interest in gardening, he bought her land to cultivate her favorite vegetables, hoping it would keep her busy. My aunt started gardening, turning into a country lady overnight. When I arrived at her house, I helped clean up the cluttered kitchenware, fix the broken doors and drawers. I only planned to help briefly, but couldn't leave seeing the mess. My uncle didn't show up, and my aunt, frustrated, mentioned he ran into a friend and decided to drink and stay over since he couldn't drive. It felt like my aunt was getting back at him for the times she went out drinking when their son was young. By 7 p.m., it was getting dark, and I couldn't bring myself to leave my aunt alone. I called my wife, saying I couldn't make it home because of the unfinished work, and my aunt needing me. My wife was very appreciative of my helping my aunt. My aunt, feeling overwhelmed by being alone in her second house, thanked me for staying with her. My aunt's house has 3 bedrooms, but after the recent flood, only one remained undamaged. Water had seeped into the living room too, leaving behind a stubborn, unpleasant smell no matter how much we cleaned. The thought of having to share a room with my aunt made me wonder if this was really okay, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything about it. My aunt said, "Thank you for helping out today. I'll go take a shower first," and headed to the bathroom. The sound of running water somehow made my mind clearer. My aunt quickly finished her shower, and after taking a refreshing shower myself, I entered the room. She brought out some alcohol from the refrigerator. She regretted building her house at the base of a mountain, calling it a foolish decision. "Do you think I don't know what my husband wants? He built this house away from the city, thinking it would stop me from drinking or seeing my friends, but I've managed to avoid making a spectacle of myself. In our 20 years of marriage, even when men would approach us at bars, wanting to join our table, I've never done anything to betray my conscience. I truly just drank," she vented. She started to cry, saying she was married at a young age to the first man she met when she got pregnant, and how she lives in suspicion, despite not having been able to return to school and only having a high school diploma. She questioned if she and her husband were truly compatible. Feeling sorrowful after he left the house again today, wondering if she could continue to trust in their relationship. Drinking, my aunt poured out the pent-up sadness she felt during her marriage. Although she knew complaining to her nephew-in-law was like spitting on her own face, I listened quietly to her. Eventually, my aunt lay down and closed her eyes, perhaps overcome by sleepiness, and I lay down next to her, overwhelmed by fatigue. Despite the thin summer blanket and my tired body, my consciousness remained sharp, wishing sleep would come sooner, but it didn't. Not able to sleep. "What can we do to fall asleep?" my aunt asked. "I don't know. It's bothering me too," I replied. "Let's create a secret of our own," she suggested, and we spent the night tossing and turning. The encounter between someone in their early 40s and another in their mid-30s was nothing short of fantastic. My aunt shyly said, "I've only ever known one man my whole life, but now this has happened to me." Nearly a year after finding out about my wife's pregnancy and having lived as a good father, spending time with my aunt felt incredibly refreshing. The next day, despite the chaotic surroundings, My aunt lovingly prepared a meal. On the way home, after helping clean up, I told her, "Aunt, I'll visit again," and winked. My aunt continued to reach out to me afterward. Since we couldn't meet at the second house, we met on the outskirts. She jokingly said, "Emily is so lucky. Why would she leave such a healthy husband? Feeling lonely? Thanks to her, I'm living the good life, haha," praising my health while implying she wanted to see me again, though I felt sorry for my wife. Hearing my aunt's compliments made me want to spend more thrilling moments with her, as long as we weren't caught.